Hey lovely, welcome to the Kinky Coffee Break. Grab a cuppa and listen in as I chat with some special guests from the world of conscious sexuality and beyond. Some of the chats will be about kink, but it's just as likely that we'll be talking about a wide range of perspectives and lived experiences, all about exploring hidden parts of ourselves or different ways to be in connection. I'm Lex, and I'm an embodiment-focused kink and sex educator, and I support people to explore topics around sexuality, pleasure, intimacy, identity, and relating. A big focus of my work is around how kink, done ethically, can be used as a route to empowerment and for us to become whole, integrated humans. As you might expect from a podcast on these topics, these chats may contain explicit language, descriptions of sexual acts, and themes that may be challenging to hear. Remember, listen to your body and choose what feels good for you. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Kinky Coffee Break. And I'm joined today by my dear friend Æris. And hey, see you. We are sometimes hair twins, but not today. Sadly, we didn't coordinate. But yeah, would you like to share who you are and what you do? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hello, I'm Æris Grace. I'm active in the field of intimacy, equally with one-on-one work, as some more organizational work, and working on developing the intimacy sector in Belgium. Yay!
Yay! I forgot to mention that you're not UK based, you're based in Belgium at the moment.
Yeah.
Amazing. And would you like to share a little bit about how we met?
Yeah.
Would you feel open to that?
Yeah. It's already a little while ago. So we were on team boat at an intimacy event, a week-long intimacy deep dive. It was very juicy to get to know you there, Lex. And it's immediately like, for me, it felt like a kind of place where we really got to meet each other in a way that goes beyond like a first meet where it's like having a drink at night or something with somebody. To my feeling, we immediately hit it off. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, reflecting on that and just thinking how, you know, it's a really interesting way to meet someone for the first time. Like, I don't think I'd ever seen you before. And then all of a sudden we're on the team for a very, very intense week. And I recall having some really, really, for me, like profound conversations about different aspects of our lives. And it was also really significant period of my life in terms of like some of the things I was working through around gender identity.
Yeah.
It felt like we just came together in like a similar point of our lives. So yeah, and I'm really glad that we've kind of stayed in contact and become kind of peers who can come together and talk about some of the work that we're doing and the challenges that we're seeing out there in the world. Yeah, it's really an honor to have you here. And
thank you for having me.
I usually start by asking people, as it is the coffee break, and the idea is that this would be like somebody listening in to us if we were having a conversation in a cafe. Like, what would you be drinking?
If I would be in a cafe or what I'm drinking now.
Oh, let's see what you're drinking today. Yeah.
At this point, I've caffeinated myself already quite enough, so I switched to like a thyme citron kind of fresh beverage. It's like nice and hot, so I'm like in this quiet, cool little part of the house, and like very much like being a bit under my cool rock with like a cool beverage kind of situation.
Yeah, very wise. I didn't do that, and I'm in the warmest room in my house right now, and it is very hot. But I did switch also from caffeine, so I'm on a Tulsi tea today. So hopefully that will serve us.
Yeah.
And I also like to ask kind of what kind of gets you out of bed in the morning, or what kind of keeps stoking the coals for you, the fire, the flames, to do this work?
Yeah. I think for me it's just feeling the impact that's there. Like often, like it feels as somebody who's like socially engaged. Often it feels that there are like these big things going on in the world, and very much feels like, okay, like how can I effectively like have a grasp on that? And now it feels for me that it shifted a bit towards like, okay, how can there actually be like an improvement of people's life just in a like day-to-day situation with like every little aspect of my work that I'm doing. And then it feels very like it very much like gives me like a lot of joy to actually see and feel the responses, to see people like develop over years, and to just have a bit this feeling of like, yay, I played my own little part in that. Just basically that.
Yes to that. And one of the things that has come up a lot in conversations that we've had sort of personally around the work that we do is this topic of like ageism.
Yeah.
And one of the things that can be noticeable in a lot of sort of sex positive spaces is that there can be like a lot of people of like a similar age group that kind of come together and like go along to all of these events together, meet each other. And also I remember we've had a conversation about kind of like in community living in general, the same thing is reflected, right? So groups of similar ages come together, and what can be lacking is this sort of diversity of ages, this like multi-generational aspect. And I know that this is something that I experience you as being really passionate about this topic. And I'm curious, like, people who may not spend a lot of time in like, or who don't work in intimacy work, or don't spend a lot of time in like sex positive spaces, might wonder like, is this even a thing? Like, does ageism exist in these spaces? And I'm curious to get your take on like how you see this.
Yeah. So for me, it feels that when people start to like expand and explore different parts of their identity, that can have to do as well with like different forms of their intimacy, and like actually starting to engage with that personal exploration, that personal work. Often I see that certain parts of who somebody is can make it more challenging to actually step into that process. And sometimes it feels that there are like extra blocks to actually be able to get to the juice and the specific thing that they're trying to explore. For me, what I sometimes see, and I find that then like a bit sad, is that there is indeed it feels that there are like more artificial divides between like when people from specific age groups enter like a certain social space, like sex positive spaces, or intimacy spaces, that it sometimes that I see that it's often more complex to actually connect and to get into certain forms of like intimacy and sex.
Yeah, I really want to come back to that about the artificial barriers that are there. And I also wanted to almost go back a step to something you said about the additional blocks that might be there before someone even gets into these spaces. So what kind of blocks do you see people having to actually kind of explore this work in the first place, if they're kind of, I don't know, let's say over 40, like just to take like a number, that like what blocks do you see there being later in life?
So I'm seeing different things, and it depends very, very much. It's like very interesting to look at like gender, to see like how people are socialized. And I think we can be talking about certain like learning processes, like, okay, how do I function or how do I participate in a new social environment that's not like my native habitat? But then we can be talking as well about like some things that for me don't really have to do about like learning how to like how to function in a new like social environment. I remember being in like some spaces, some people that were that were over 50. There are like some exercises happening, and I'm seeing this person. Basically, it's often this like quite awkward moment of like, okay, now let's find somebody to do this exercise with. And I'm seeing this like happen a few times with like a same person. Somebody's quite like who identifies as a woman in her 50s. And it feels for some kind of reason like I see her needing like a longer amount of time to actually find like a right match to actually do the exercises with. And for me, it was like, okay, I was like feeling this person. I was seeing like how she was within that specific social context, and it's not that there is it's just like a lovely human participating in the space, and like nothing that I've got like, okay, like something that feels off like related to the person in that space. But then I'm seeing this like constantly come back, and I'm like, okay, I'm then curious, like, okay, imagine if this person would have been like 10 or 20 years younger, like would it have been the same situation? And my theory is that for that specific person, that finding somebody to do an exercise with, that would have been a vastly different story. And I found that like quite difficult, because like it's something that I often see like coming back in some spaces. Then I'm like, okay, I'm seeing this like actually like very like warm and open people with often already like quite a bit of experience. And then I'm seeing like these kind of like complexities happen, and I'm like, okay, but like in almost every other kind of environment, like this would have been like very like if you've got somebody that is that has like quite a bit of experience on certain things, that has like a lot of like valuable things to share and to bring into like specific interactions, like it would be a good thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I see in the like private sessions that I do one-to-one with clients or couples, but also in the group spaces, there are a lot of people sort of, 40 plus, 50 plus, 60 plus, 70 plus, who are drawn to kink or drawn to exploring sexuality more broadly.
Yeah.
And okay, for some of those people, but I don't think, this is something that's only for people who are sort of later in life, that, for some of the reasons will be because of like physical conditions or limitations, like postmenopausal people, yes, that might be a factor, but just as likely they're coming to this at this stage in their life because there's a curiosity. There's something that they might have felt for, decades that they're interested in, like an aspect of their identity, a curiosity about something, that actually they don't want to go through the rest of their life not exploring. And so there's this kind of desire to feel alive later in life. and so it's not that, it's not that curiosity's, not that goes away. If anything, I found that it like seems to increase, and it has for me. Like I'm getting older, I'm like approaching 40 as well. I'm like, wow, there's just as much desire, if not more, because I probably feel less self-conscious now than I did, let's say, in my 20s. So people are exploring this at all ages, but I think what you've really hit on there is that it's then when they get into group spaces that somehow in some of these spaces a chunk of people are being overlooked when it comes to being paired up. And that feels to me, and I know we've spoken about this a fair bit, is like it feels as though that's coming down to like desirability politics.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because, we've, as practitioners, we're trying to navigate this when we're holding spaces for groups, because I personally feel like, as you say, the example you gave, this is somebody who's like, you experience as being like a lovely human, as like all this wonderful experience and like personality and character that they're bringing into a space. And yet people can't see past this age difference. And yeah, I'm curious, like, how do we navigate this? I've got some ideas and some things that I'm kind of experimenting with in my spaces that I run. But from your side, like, how do you navigate that when you can see in spaces that you run with groups that people are being overlooked and not for any obvious reason?
Yeah, I think I often find it interesting. For me, it can go together a bit with like couple-centric thinking. And that I often find it interesting that sometimes it feels that like in some group spaces, if people are very much focused on this like finding the one in the workshop, if that makes sense. So that way of thinking is still present, then often it feels for me that can create like quite a bit of scarcity. That it's like often like, okay, if people try to rather than seeing that often these group spaces, that there is like a lot of abundance there in different ways, that there are that almost everybody that has shown up there with you today has something valuable that they can bring to you. It almost feels like that there is some kind of a buffet, and I see people like eat one dish. Or like I'm like, okay, like and for me it then very much boils down to this like process of like, okay, but how can we like take a step back in this process of like interacting with each other, with where we put our intention, is actually the intention to experience like how can we move towards like group care and like a sense of like abundance that is present when we get together in like affirmative group spaces.
I usually one of the things I see in my role doing these conversations is like I'm trying to imagine what some people might be thinking when they're hearing this and like play devil's advocate a little bit. And one of the things that I have heard before actually in spaces where, we're trying to create this like affirmative approach where, everyone's just like, wow, like what could we experience within this abundance? You touched on it in like the sense that like what are people coming to these spaces for? And it's really hard, I think, for people to kind of like peel away that layer that says, well, I'm paying to be in this space, and I just want to be with like the most attractive person in the room, the person who I would actually like date and want to like, you know, be with outside of it. And not invalidating that. I think that's okay for people to come along and like, you know, think, oh, I just want to be with the like people I'm attracted to. But, well, and I think there's so much that can be experienced, as you say, when we see things differently and we see that there's a wealth of experiences to be had. And yeah, I can hear that, like, I can hear, and I've literally had this, like, feedback from people of, like, well, I've paid to be here. I'm not going to, like, be in service and just be with that person over there that's not being picked. And I'm like, oof. And what's interesting from, like, what I've experienced myself being in these spaces, like, not as a practitioner, but just as a participant, and have witnessed in others, is that actually, when we go with that mindset of like, I only want to like play or explore with people who I'm attracted to, I usually get way less out of it. Because if I'm with somebody who I normally would choose, who I'm attracted to, I'm going to be way more self-conscious. I'm going to probably be a little bit more performative. And really, for me, going into these spaces now, what I'm there for is to learn about myself, to develop, to explore beyond what I already know, from what I already do out there in the world. And for me, that there's something really powerful when we go beyond our usual attraction or our usual preferences. Because often the most powerful things for me in any form of intimacy is someone's presence. It's what they reflect back to me, or what I feel like in with them that I haven't felt before, and how I respond to that. And how are you going to get that if you come to a space which you're paying for, or you come to a space and you choose exactly the same way as you choose in the world? And so, yeah, I think really like encouraging people to think of it that way, of like, okay, why don't you try something different? Why don't you see this as a way to explore beyond your usual choices? And I think, yeah, I love the analogy you use of like a buffet. There's a beautiful buffet that's being laid out, and everyone's just going with the same dish, and it's just like, yeah. And would you be open to sharing any other kind of experiences that you've had, either as a kind of like facilitator or in your sort of personal life, exploring kind of, like that expansion of what's possible when we look with a different set of eyes in these spaces?
I think for me it has been interesting, the this feeling of like who's the last person in the room that I actually want to engage with. And that can equally be somebody that's like for some kind of reason feeling attractive in a way that is coming in, or it can be somebody that feels like there is some kind of charge there, which can be in a different way as well. And for me, it's then sometimes interesting, like when I go in that space, and then my head has like all these kind of theories about like why these specific things are there. That for me, like it has become like very much the signifier of like, okay, who's the last person in the room, and maybe I should go to that person first. And then for me, it becomes less about like, okay, what is it like specifically? And I'm of course not talking about like a gut feeling of like, this is a person to stay away from because they are unsafe, yada yada yada. I'm of course not talking about that. But then for me, it becomes like very interesting how like some of the people that were triggering me originally the most, like how they became actually like very close friends in the end. Like some people where I was like a bit unsure of like, okay, like actually, like you're a kind of profile that I couldn't like imagine even like how like a dynamic or a relationship could start to unfold here, and actually like letting that run its course. And then actually like seeing like, okay, but this is I indeed couldn't have imagined, because like I don't really have like the blueprints for actually showing up in this space. But then how that in and of its own like just is so much richer for me than doing a repetition of the thing that I already knew.
Mm-hmm. I resonate so much with that, and I'm like having flashbacks as you say that of years ago now, being at an intensive training like week, and there being one person in this not huge group, but I just really did not want to like a sex positive space at all. It was more like a coaching space. And like every time it'd come to an exercise, I'd be like, please don't be with them. I hope really was that the whole week that I would have managed to avoid doing any paired exercises with them. And I don't know what that was, but there was something in me that was resisting them. And the funny thing is, they know this, but like now they're one of my really close friends. They are the person who, if I was going to make a quite significant life decision, I would go to them. And I would, I would really value and treasure their input and reflections. But absolutely at the time, I was like, oh, I should really, please don't go with them. But yeah, it's interesting. We did a talk with Andrew Kane about improv. And he spoke a little bit about, you know, where there's that much resistance in something. Like you said, there's a difference, isn't there, between kind of something in you doesn't actually feel safe. We're not saying to like step into something that feels unsafe, but like if there's resistance there, what is that? And perhaps there's some gifts in it, if you can lead into what's there. Yeah. And I wonder then, I mentioned earlier about sort of desirability politics, and I'm curious, like your take on like where does it come from? This kind of like essentially what is ageism in the world of intimacy? Like, what's your take on that?
So I think there can be many different reasons. Sometimes I've got a bit the impression that there are like quite a few different different parts of our socialization that we can go look at the moment we're starting to explore certain sex positive spaces and be active in that. Quite a few people are socialized in a way that it's like, okay, we're doing the relationship escalator. We're doing this thing where we're trying to find the right partner. And then with this right partner, we're gonna have deeper levels of intimacy. We're gonna co-live. We're gonna even maybe like take care of like some animals or like some little humans together, yada, 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 yada. And what I then sometimes see is that at some point, sometimes people start to question for themselves, like, okay, is this way of relating? Is that something that is applicable for like all my relationships? Are there maybe different forms of relationship possible as well? And what I'm then sometimes seeing is like, okay, let's start to explore, for example, like our sexuality. Maybe that doesn't need to be fully fixed with like this one person. Maybe my intimate life, like equally emotionally, like kinky or in some different forms. Maybe it's something that's nice to explore with people in different forms of relationships as well. What I then sometimes still see is that people often like while being in that process, that there are still a lot of the basic assumptions present that are tied to this finding a partner where you want to escalate a whole bunch of different things with. But then for me, in quite a few different forms of like intimacy, that actually doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. If I'm talking about like, there are like a whole bunch of things related to like sensuality, related to emotional intimacy, related to different forms of kink that are for me very much not tied to like anything that is in that in that relationship model. But what I then sometimes see is that like it's of course logical in that specific model that it's often like, okay, you're looking for somebody who's more or less in like a similar life phase, who's more or less like similarly resourced, that in all these different elements that you're showing up mostly as equals, which is important for like bigger shared projects, for example, with like raising of kids or whatever. But then for me, it's like if we're talking about like intergenerational intimacy, and we're talking about like intimate group spaces, we're talking about creating like social groups in which people actually feel that they're held like emotionally, physically, and blah blah blah. There are like a whole bunch of humans that I very much love to cuddle on the couch with and watch a movie with. For me, that doesn't need to be like in that specific relationship. It can be the same for me. Like I'm a rope practitioner. Like I very much love to be in that kind of dance with people together. And for me, that also doesn't really tie together with that process anymore. Mm-hmm. But then like it becomes interesting for me a bit. Like I was recently thinking about like red flags in for engaging with people, and I'm like starting to become curious about like, okay, what are some subconscious red flags that we put in relationship with people, and how well do they translate between like different generations?
Would you be open to sharing more about that?
For me, it can, for example, have to do with like certain forms of like language use and openness. What does it mean? Like, what is the difference for me between like different generations? That I've got a feeling of like, this is an open person, a person I feel safe with, and that I actually want to engage with. And for me, it will be vastly different. Like if I use the same like indicators like between different generations, I don't think that always translates.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's super interesting. I've not thought about that before. Thank you for sharing that. My cogs are turning, and I'm trying to update my own thinking as you say that. And I think one of the aspects that I think comes in when, let's say, a person in their 20s, for example, is in a play space, and there's somebody in their 50s there. I think when there's like an age difference, I feel curious about whether there's some fears there that come up.
Yeah.
I mean, I imagine on both sides of that dynamic, but like for the younger person, I think it taps into some of the fear that we can have of aging in general, and aging bodies and all of these things. And again, for me, that kind of comes back into this broader topic of desirability politics. And by that, I mean that there's a lot of work that I think that we can do about trying to understand the origins of our preferences. Because some people say, well, I just don't like men, for example. Like, I'm a man, I don't like playing with men, or I like women, that's it, it's simple. And that's okay, that's a choice, you know, no one's trying to force you to do anything beyond that. But the work that I feel is really interesting is like understanding where does that come from, and how much of that is actually your individual preference versus, you internalizing society's preferences around what's attractive, and we know that like we're essentially internalizing privilege in a way, and power structures that exist in society that prioritize and center whiteness and able-bodiedness and youth and slim bodies and all of these things. And I think that that whole thing in society of like centering youth as youth being like that very small window where society thinks that you're actually powerful, so not too young but not too old, you have all this power. And I think that because that is how we see things in society, that then we internalize some of that fear of getting older, because then, well, I won't have power. I've had some stuff come up for me around like, so I'll be turning 40 next year, and knowing that society perceives people socialized as female as they get older as like less powerful, less important, less desirable. And so I wonder if some of it that comes up for people is like when we're thinking of or exploring playing with somebody else and like seeing an older body, what that stirs up in ourselves around our own fears of getting older. But also like I notice a lot of people have fears around almost like this idea of older bodies being like fragile. I've seen this, so like wondering like, would it be okay to do impact play on somebody in their 60s, for example, or could you really tie somebody up who's 70? And it's like it feels bizarre for me because there's so many assumptions around what it means to have an older body. And I know lots of people like in my life who are 30, 40 years older than me, and I think their bodies are probably more robust. They're probably fitter and healthier than I am. And it also shows this kind of like all of the assumptions that are layered on around when we see somebody, what we automatically assume around their like health and mobility and their robustness, like all of these things that's not actually serving any of the people, because you're probably not getting to know the other people and what their bodies are like. And actually we should be just having conversations around these things explicitly of like, do you have any mobility issues? Do you experience pain? What's normal for you? Rather than just like, you look young and healthy, so I can do anything I want to you, and like, you might be fragile and I probably can't do things to you. And I think it's just we miss something really important there when we just kind of project these things onto like older bodies equals fragility or lack of mobility. And it's how do we go about like addressing that?
And it's indeed a good point about like for me it ties together with like a whole bunch of underlying assumptions that can be there, equally related to fitness, related to desire is for me an interesting one as well. Like that it's like okay, that it still feels that we have some lingering things where like sexuality, intimacy is linked specifically to procreation. And that for me it's like okay, very weird. Like I can understand some of the echoes of that still, but like maybe good as well to become more and more present in our day-to-day life, that those echoes don't really aren't part of our current day reality as much as possible. And I found it very, very interesting, like what you said earlier as well about like people being very like motivated to like explore and expand, and like actually being very much in this joie de vivre, like this enjoyment of life. And then it's for me sometimes very like funny is not maybe the right word, but like this mismatch then with like what people project on them of what they can actually hold with that. There's like this couple in their 60s that I know, and I often find it interesting, like to see how they play a bit with those societal assumptions as well in like day-to-day life. And you're seeing like the way that they move through different social spaces, like what's projected on them, but they're actually like very like playful, kinky, like expressive human beings that are like in this very big enjoyment of life. Yeah. Then it's like interesting to see like on only what little part that quite a few people can only meet of them. And then like actually seeing like if you see the full like the fuller picture of who they are and what they're actually bringing, that it becomes this like vastly like different story. If we're talking about like, okay, what are they actually enjoying, what do they bring in, that it's indeed like yeah.
Yeah, what's coming up in my mind as you were talking is like that vitality is not linked to age, but yet we assume like I know lots of people, I know for myself, like in my 20s, I didn't have a lot of vitality. I wasn't tapping into my vitality. I know lots of people who are in similar positions, and then I know people, in some of the most alive, joyful, abundant, full of desire and awe and wonder at the world people I know are in like, I don't know, their 60s, their 70s, 80s even. Like I just don't think it's tied to our age. And yet I think you're right, there's something, isn't it? And yeah, I hadn't really thought about that aspect of like how deeply ingrained that is actually for us to still associate like desire with reproduction and procreation. And it's like, well, okay, so once somebody, isn't kind of in that stage of life where they can create a child, then like the desire doesn't just switch off, like not at all. And even though many of the people I'm encountering aren't kind of living that conventional life of like, wanting to have a heterosexual monogamous relationship and create a family, like even in queer circles actually, where that's not like the focus, I do think those beliefs are still lingering. Like once we get past that age, once we, for example, people who experience menopause, once we've reached menopause, then surely desire just drifts away from us. And it's just not true for everyone. Oh, and I wonder a lot about, what's coming up for me is something around being really clear with our intentions when we go into these spaces, actually. And like, I guess there's this work that can be done around exploring where our preferences really come from and whether they're ours. So like that piece around desirability politics, and also just acknowledging that I'm sitting here talking about desirability politics as someone who like benefits from a lot of societal privilege at the moment, but also like without going into the depths of that, I think on a really basic level, people getting clear with themselves around their intention if they're going to a play space or a workshop or something like that, of like, yes, it's okay and it's valid to be going there with the hope that you'll meet your future partner, if that's the kind of path that you're on, and for you to then therefore only be drawn to the people who you're drawn to. But if you're there for something that's expanding yourself, you're there to explore, you're there to like go beyond what's possible in your day-to-day life, then maybe there is something for you in kind of not immediately going to the first person that you feel attracted to, and maybe just being curious around kind of, where is my resistance? As you said, who's the person in this room I'd be least likely to choose, and not from a place of unsafety, but actually from a curiosity of like, why is there so much resistance there? And I wonder if people are hearing this conversation and they feel like they might benefit from exploring this topic some more, what might you suggest that they do or think about or look into?
Good question. There are some very interesting like podcasts on the matter as well. Need to look into which ones I found influential myself. Okay, I'm noticing that I'm drawing a bit of a blank, but yeah.
I think you're right. Like, I've found a lot with podcasts as well. So maybe we can put some links in the show notes for this. So I know there's a couple of episodes in particular that I tend to send to people. And maybe it's just a piece of, self-reflection, like around, what does come up for you when you think about exploring intimacy with someone who's in a different age group, and that could be someone who's younger than you, someone who's older than you. Just like, what does that bring up? What does that stir up for you? And like, where might that be coming from, actually?
An interesting exercise, like at some point. We're talking as well about like, okay, people preferring certain forms of intimacy with a specific gender or a specific age group or whatever kind of external characteristics. Like getting clear on our desires indeed, and like actually reclaiming our desire and what is actually my personal desire in this specific moment. I found it interesting to like try to pull apart a bit like what intimacy can be. And often like the moment that we're looking for like all forms of intimacy to ball together with like one person, often I get the impression that we're missing out on like some of the richness that human life and human relationships can be. And I find it interesting to go look like, okay, like what different elements of my intimacy would actually make sense for me in specific situations. At some point, I did that with gender, for example. Like, okay, if we're talking about the people in my surroundings, I'm seeing people that are socialized as women. They're like hugging and so on, watching television together, like while cuddling. It's like very normal. Then I'm looking at the people that have been socialized as men, and I'm like, okay, they're not doing that at all. Like, they're barely touching each other, and what's going on? And then for me, it was a bit this realization of like, okay, I've been socialized like that. But I very much love to cuddle, and I very much love different forms of just a friendly hand on the back or whatever kind of little forms of like physical intimacy. And for me, it was like going through the process. Like, okay, like how does that work with sexuality? How does that work with different forms of kink? For example, with rope, with impact, like with every kind of things. And I was like, okay. It's actually some fairly specific forms of intimacy where where I'm noticing a very stronger imbalances related to people with specific gender expressions. Like with all of the others, like it's actually way more open. And for me, it's a bit the same process that can happen as well related to like age and so on. Like, okay, like which forms of intimacy actually make sense or don't make sense. And I'm noticing like for me personally, it has been a very big process to step into like people that are more male presenting and that are older than me, that I'm noticing that often took a while for my nervous system to actually relax and to allow for different forms of emotional intimacy there, for different forms of like physical intimacy, and to explore further there. I'm actually like very happy to have stepped in that process and to actually feel at this point, like actually there are like a whole bunch of beautiful cisgendered people that are older than me that are present in my life, that are very supportive, and I'm very happy to actually have gone into that process, and that it's now possible for us to be in each other's life in a very open-hearted way.
Yeah. It's so powerful what you just shared. And I'm hearing like the empowerment that can come for people from like reclaiming intimacy. You know, when we, as you say, when we start to pull that apart from thinking like intimacy is one thing, a singular thing, like it comes back to the relationship escalator that you mentioned earlier, of like, okay, well, there'll be this one person, and they're going to meet all of my intimacy needs, like emotional intimacy and affection and, you know, like kinky needs and sexual needs. And this isn't to be like anti-monogamy. I'm saying that's totally great. That's your vibe.
Yeah.
And you can have emotional intimacy still with other people. And yeah, it just feels super powerful to hear you talk about like reclaiming that, and how actually, you know, we can enjoy different forms of intimacy with people, you know, that we might not necessarily feel like we want to ever have sex with. That's a really beautiful thing, actually. You say it's like hold hands. Like I have friends who I wouldn't have you know, there just isn't a sexual kind of desire there between us, but like I can love snuggling with them. I can enjoy being kinky with them. I can kiss sometimes, you know, we can have really, really deep emotional intimacy. And that just, it just it breaks down that false scarcity that you mentioned earlier.
And for me, completely in agreement, and as well a bit the other way around for me, that it's like maybe we can expand as well like what sexuality actually is and means.
Well, yeah.
It's like for me this combination as well. There are a whole bunch of different forms of like eros that makes a lot of sense for me, with like a whole bunch of different people. Like where we don't immediately need to jump towards like some of the standards assumptions of like what kind of like script we're running for sexuality.
Yeah.
And for me, if we're then in a space where we can very much just like have this openness to actually explore just as far as we actually want to explore with specific individuals, then there isn't for me any like wrong like answer there.
Yeah. I mean, that's a whole nother episode. I realize. What do you actually mean by sex nowadays? I think we could talk about that for hours. Yeah. Thank you so much. It feels really important to be having these conversations. And I feel super honored that I have had the opportunity to talk to you, not only here in this recording, but like, you know, just over the few years that we've known each other, just kind of being able to have a space to come to and like and talk this through. I really appreciate it. If people wanted to connect with you in some way, like follow you, find out more about your work, where could they find you?
So there are some different platforms. Easiest can be Linktree Intimacy Pro.
Okay,
or my Instagram, Queer Joy is a protest, and then you can easily. And then it's also easily to click on further towards wherever you want to be with the specific things that I'm busy with.
Amazing. Anything else that you want to share before we say goodbye?
It feels quite complete. I'm very grateful to have been invited in here, and just like I've been expressing, it has been very valuable for me over the years. All the little chats, all the topics that are keeping us busy, and to be able to share a bit of that today, brother, with this podcast, it's like really fills me with joy.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much for being here, and hope that we get to talk to you again.
Yeah, would love to.
Bye for now. Bye. I'm so glad I invited Æris to come in for a chat. There's so much in this for me, and so many light bulb moments around, not only acknowledging that we can have desire like at any age, and that desire exists beyond our reproductive years, but also that I think what I'm taking away mostly is this reminder that we can do the work to deconstruct and reclaim intimacy. All of us can do that, and not just because we feel passionate about inclusivity, but actually this is about reclaiming this for ourselves and noticing where we are limiting ourselves, creating these artificial barriers and a false scarcity when we are only seeking intimacy from the people who we would normally feel sexually attracted to. And actually, when we can move beyond that, it creates such abundance. There's so many different kinds of intimacy we can experience when, we're not just, trying to find this one person who fits all of our ideals, and being curious about where those ideals came from. And I think a really sort of practical point for me was about thinking about the intention that you're taking if you're going into a group play space. If your intention is to find your future partner who you can have babies with, then absolutely, you might have a set criteria in mind of what that person may bring or may be like. But actually, if our intention is to learn about ourselves, to experience intimacy more broadly, to connect with other people, to develop, then doing something differently to what we would do in our day-to-day life could be a place where there's a lot to be learned, a lot to be gained. So I hope that you enjoyed this. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you to Molly for the graphic design, and thank you for Tom for all of the production editing. And I love doing these, so hopefully we'll be back with another one soon. Bye for now.